I don't know why I'm telling you this. I guess it's because it's 2 in the morning, the city is finally quiet, and the only light in this room is the cold, blue glow from my phone screen. It feels like a confession booth, except there's no priest and no forgiveness, just a blank text box and a story I can't tell anyone I actually know. Because if I did, they'd look at me with the same judgment I'm finally starting to see in my own reflection. My name is Sloane. I'm 29, and until a few months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Or, more accurately, I thought I knew exactly what having it all was supposed to look like. My life was a carefully curated gallery of perfect moments, each one filtered and captioned for maximum engagement. I measured my happiness in likes and my self-worth in follower counts. I was the architect of a beautiful illusion, and I was its first and most devoted believer. When I met Reed 6 years ago, it felt like finding an anchor in a storm I didn't even know I was in. I was at a mutual friend's casual birthday barbecue, trying to get the perfect candid shot of myself, laughing with a drink in my hand. He was sitting off to the side, just watching people, a small, genuine smile on his face. He was 30 then, working a stable IT job for the city, and he had this incredible stillness about him. He didn't need to be the center of attention. He didn't seem to need anything from anyone. I remember thinking, wow, he's so grounded. I was so used to guys who were always performing, always bragging about their next big move, their car, their hustle. Reed was different. He had a quiet confidence that was more magnetic than any flashy display of wealth. We started talking, and it was easy. It was real. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about how this conversation would sound if I recounted it in an Instagram story. I was just there. Our first few dates were beautifully simple. We'd get coffee from a local shop and walk for hours, discovering little bookstores and parks. We'd binge-watch cheesy sci-fi shows in my cramped apartment, sharing a bowl of popcorn. It was comfortable in a way that felt both wonderful and slightly terrifying. It was wonderful because with him, I felt like I could finally exhale. It was terrifying because nothing we did was particularly glamorous or post-worthy. But I loved how he never tried to show off. Ironically, that's what made me fall for him. Of course, the moment we made it official, I posted about it. A carefully selected, softly lit photo of us, my head on his shoulder, with a caption about finding someone who just gets it. The comments poured in, "Oh my God, you two are perfect." And, "Number couple goals is right." I soaked it all up, each notification a little hit of validation. I had found a good, decent man, and now the world knew it, which somehow made it feel more real, more valuable. We got married 2 years later. It wasn't a huge, lavish wedding that would have broken the internet. We couldn't afford one. We had a simple ceremony at the courthouse, and a small reception in my parents' backyard with fairy lights and a playlist Reed spent weeks curating. My relatives adored him. He was polite, drama-free, and seemed perfectly content with a simple life. I told myself that was what I wanted too. That stable, no-frills love was the real prize. We moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment that was a little smaller than I would have liked, but it was ours. I was working a dead-end customer service job, fielding angry calls all day, while Reed did his 9 to 5. It wasn't glamorous, but we paid our bills. For that first year, it felt like we were living in a romantic bubble. We'd order pizza and cuddle on our worn-out couch. We'd take cheap weekend road trips to nearby towns, and I'd snap a few photos, posting them with a sweet caption about how adventures don't have to be expensive when you're with the right person. The validation I got from those posts made me feel like our humble life was a deliberate, almost noble choice. We weren't just broke, we were authentic. But authenticity, I learned, doesn't pay for the things you see on your feed every single day. As the first year of our marriage bled into the second, the cracks began to appear, not in our love, but in my perception of it. I started noticing things. Reed would come home from work, plop onto the couch, and just stay there. He'd watch a documentary or play a video game, perfectly content. It was like his ambition switch had been turned off, or maybe it was never on to begin with. Meanwhile, my phone was a constant portal to other lives, other marriages. I'd scroll through my feed and see influencer couples renovating gorgeous homes, launching businesses from their laptops, traveling to Bali on a whim. Their lives looked so intentional, so vibrant, so big. And I'd look up from my phone, at Reed in his favorite faded sweatshirt, and a hot, ugly knot of resentment would tighten in my stomach. We weren't doing more. We weren't growing. I started dropping hints, cloaking my criticism in the language of encouragement. Hey honey, did you ever think about asking your boss about that management track? Or, you're so good with computers. Why don't you start a little side hustle fixing them for people? You could make easy money. Reed would just shrug, giving me a placid smile. I'm comfortable, Sloan. My job is secure, the benefits are good. Maybe in a few months, I'll look into some new opportunities. Comfortable, the word was like nails on a chalkboard to me. Who wants to be comfortable? I wanted to be bold, to take risks, to build an empire, even if it was just a tiny one made of sponsored posts and affiliate links. I wanted progress, something more than the same old dinner, TV, bed routine. It felt like I was the only one pushing our life forward, while he was happy to stay anchored in the shallow end. My restlessness found its outlet where it always did, online. Since our real life felt stagnant, I began to pour all my energy into making our staged life look more exciting. I became a director, a producer, a publicist for our marriage. I'd pick a trendy new cafe I saw on Instagram, drag Reed there on a Saturday morning, and order the most photogenic latte and avocado toast. I'd take a dozen pictures from different angles before either of us could take a bite. Then I'd post the best one with a witty caption about quality time with my love. Actions. In reality, Reed would have been just as happy, if not happier, at a hole-in-the-wall diner in his old sweatpants. There was nothing wrong with that, but I was hungry for the version of us that other people could see and admire. I liked the idea that people thought we had it all figured out. The small arguments started, usually about money or how we spent our free time. I'd see a friend post about her trip to Mexico, and the envy would spark like a faulty wire inside me. We never do anything like that, I'd complain to Reed later that night. You know our budget, Sloan, he'd say calmly. Let's be realistic. Every time he said the word realistic, I wanted to scream. Who says we can't have an amazing life? But then, just when I'd be ready to write him off as complacent, he'd do something small and perfect. He'd surprise me by picking up all the groceries so I didn't have to do it after a draining day at work. He'd randomly text me a stupid meme when I was stuck on a particularly awful call. He showed me he cared in his quiet, steady way, but it wasn't enough to shake the feeling that we were settling. In my mind, couples who flourished were always reaching for something new, together. I also started noticing a disturbing pattern in our disagreements. I was always the one who talked the loudest, who twisted words around until he was backed into a corner. I would guilt-trip him into doing what I wanted, and I didn't even recognize it as manipulation at the time. I saw it as persuasion. I started using intimacy and affection as leverage. If he agreed to upgrade my phone or take me to that trendy new restaurant, I'd be all over him, loving and sweet. If he said no, citing our budget, I'd turn cold, distant. I thought I was teaching him how to treat me right. Looking back, I can see I was just teaching him that my love was conditional. We started hanging out more with a couple of my friends and their partners. They were all on social media, documenting every get-together. Reed would just smile politely, a quiet observer in a room full of performers. I could tell he was bored, but I was living for the chance to be in a group shot, tagging everyone, racking up the likes. My friends would tease Reed, calling him Mr. Chill, and I'd laugh along. Yeah, he really is too chill, right? I'd say, a joke that felt more like a complaint. I wanted him to be more engaging, more fun, more brag-worthy. I never said it to him directly, but the thought was always there, eating away at me. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a little over a year ago. A small party at my friend Tara's apartment. It was nothing fancy, just a dozen people, some drinks and music. We were all sitting in the living room, playing one of those icebreaker games. Someone asked the question, "What's the biggest achievement you've had in the past 3 years?" The question went around the circle. People mentioned job promotions, buying new cars, getting engaged, running a marathon. Standard, impressive stuff. Then it got to Reed. He paused for a moment, a thoughtful look on his face. He shrugged, smiled that warm, genuine smile of his, and looked right at me. I guess getting married to Sloan was a pretty big deal for me, he said. It was his honest answer. He wasn't trying to be funny or overly sentimental. The room filled with a collective, "Ah, that's so sweet," but all I felt was a strange hot flush of embarrassment. That's it? That's literally all you've got? Before I could stop myself, the words tumbled out of my mouth, coded in a joking tone that didn't quite hide the sharp edge beneath. Oh, come on, I laughed. That's basically your only accomplishment, right? The air in the room instantly went still. Everyone sort of froze. I quickly laughed it off, trying to act like I was just teasing him, but I saw something shift in Reed's face. It was a flicker of realization, a light going out in his eyes. It was the moment he understood that maybe I didn't respect him as much as I pretended to. One of our friends tried to break the tension. "Sloane, you're harsh," he said, forcing a chuckle. But the awkwardness lingered. Reed went quiet. For the rest of the night, he barely spoke a word. When we got home, the silence in the car was heavy and suffocating. As we walked into our apartment, he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Do you really think I haven't done anything except marry you?" I immediately got defensive, the way you do when you know you're in the wrong. "Why are you so sensitive?" It was a joke. "No." He just looked at me, his eyes full of a hurt I had never seen before. He went to bed without another word. Over the next few days, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I tried to ignore it, busying myself with my phone. I posted pictures from the party, carefully selecting the ones where we looked happiest, writing some sappy caption like, "Loved spending the evening with my favorite guy." I was desperately trying to control the narrative, to project an image of perfection that was crumbling in my own home. Meanwhile, Reed withdrew even more. He stopped making those small efforts. No more surprising me with coffee. No more random meme texts. It was like he was done trying to please me, done trying to earn the affection I had made so conditional. A part of me felt a pang of guilt, but a much louder part was annoyed that he was being so dramatic over one silly joke. That's how I framed it in my head. My friends got wind of what happened. Some of them told me I was out of line. Others, the ones who were just as obsessed with appearances as I was, just shrugged and said, "He'll get over it." I chose to lean on their validation because it was easier than admitting I had disrespected my own husband in the most public and cruel way. We had a bigger talk about a week later. He told me he felt like I was always pushing him to be someone else, someone who wanted the flashy, public life I craved. "I'm not going to become a different person just so you can have something new to post online," he said, his voice flat. I snapped right back. "You act like I'm some fame-crazed teenager." He looked at me, his eyes tired. "Aren't you?" That stung because maybe he was right. The tension kept growing. We'd have good days, where we'd fall back into our old rhythm, cooking dinner together and watching a show, and for a few hours, it felt like everything was fine. But then I'd get bored, or I'd see something on Instagram that would trigger my envy, and I'd pick a fight. I'd tell him he should get a certification for work, that he should be networking more. He'd say he was content. I'd huff, "You're so lazy," and he'd retreat into silence again. The small resentments piled up, becoming a heavy, unmovable weight between us. I started going out with my single friends more often, posting pictures of myself having a grand time, subtly implying I was happier without him. He would just stay home, which somehow irritated me even more. Our intimacy suffered. I'd accuse him of not paying attention to me, and he'd say it was hard to be affectionate with someone who made him feel constantly belittled. I knew I was using it as a weapon. If he didn't plan a better date, or wear the outfit I wanted him to wear, I'd turn off any warmth. It was a toxic power play, and I didn't see it for what it was until it was far too late. The breaking point came about 6 months after the party. There was a casual work gathering for his office. I showed up in a tight dress, determined to impress his colleagues, to be the hot wife. But Reed barely acknowledged how I looked. The entire night he was polite, introducing me to people, but he wasn't doting on me the way I expected, the way that would look good to others. On the drive home, I exploded. "Why do I even bother trying if you don't appreciate me?" I seethed. He kept his eyes on the road. "Sloane, you don't do this for me. You do this for the applause of strangers." That statement got under my skin so badly I felt like I was shaking. It was the truth, and I hated him for saying it. A few days later, we had the final argument. I was pushing him again, this time about applying for a better-paying job in the private sector. "You're never happy with what we have, are you?" he said, his voice laced with exhaustion. I shot back, my voice dripping with contempt. "Well, you've never given me a reason to be." I could see the hurt in his eyes, raw and deep. Instead of backing down, I doubled down. I started ranting about how I was sick of being with someone so average, that I deserved more, and then, I brought out the weapon I knew would hurt him the most. "It's true, you know," I said, my voice cold. "Your biggest accomplishment is marrying me, and you don't even appreciate me." He just stared at me for a long moment, and then all the fight seemed to drain out of him. "I'm done with this," he said quietly, and walked out of the room. I sat there, fuming, but there was also this weird twisting knot in my stomach. A few days later, I decided I'd had enough. I was the one who was going to make the big move. I grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing clothes into it. I'm going to stay with Tara for a while, I announced. You clearly don't want to grow with me, so what's the point of us being together? In my head, this was the dramatic climax of the movie. This was the wake-up call that would force him to realize how much he needed me. He would beg me to stay. He would promise to change, to fight for me. But he didn't. He just looked at me, his face weary. If that's what you need, he said, then go. I left, slamming the door behind me. I felt a confusing mix of anger and triumph. You'll regret losing me, I thought. The first couple of weeks crashing on Tara's couch, I kept up the performance. I posted pictures of myself out at bars, smiling with my friends, with captions about self-care and new beginnings. I was acting carefree, but secretly, I was checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for Reed to call, to text, to beg me to come home. He never did. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted him. Don't you miss me? His reply came a few minutes later. I miss who you used to be, not who you are now. Ow. That single sentence broke through my defenses like a wrecking ball. But still, my pride wouldn't let me admit that I had messed up. I was also starting to realize how expensive it was to live without his half of the bills. My carefully curated single life was draining my bank account. At first, I was furious, thinking, he's so heartless. He's just letting me struggle. But another part of me, a small, terrified voice, whispered, maybe you overplayed your hand. I tried to keep the drama alive by venting to anyone who would listen, painting Reed as this lazy, unsupportive husband who was holding me back. Some friends nodded along sympathetically. A few, the braver ones, called me out. Sloan, aren't you the one who made that messed up joke about him? You disrespected him. I brushed them off, insisting they didn't understand. Deep down, I knew I was just deflecting. I was searching for a bigger life, but all I had was my friend's cramped living room and a gallery of forced smiles on my phone. I finally hit a wall. The glamorous, bold adventure I thought was waiting for me didn't magically appear just because I had walked away from my marriage. All I had were pictures that got old fast and a suffocating wave of regret that would crash over me late at night. I considered going back, but my pride was a fortress. In my twisted logic, he should be the one to apologize first for not being ambitious enough, for not living up to the version of him I had invented in my head. Finally, after 2 months of near silence, he reached out. The text was simple and brutal. Are you coming to get the rest of your stuff, or should I pack it up for you? It hit me then. This was real. This was the end. I still wasn't ready to say I was sorry, so I just texted back, I'll pick it up on Saturday. Walking back into our apartment felt surreal. It wasn't a grand place, but it was ours. There was the old couch where we used to cuddle, the kitchen where we made cheap pasta dinners and laughed. Suddenly, I missed those simple days with an ache so profound it took my breath away. But I couldn't show it. I grabbed a few boxes of my things, and we barely spoke. He seemed calm. Not angry, not sad. Just done. Later that night, I cried in Tara's bathroom, a deep, ugly cry for everything I had lost. But even then, I couldn't fully own my mistakes. I told myself he should have tried harder. He should have fought for me. He should have been the one to chase that promotion, that bigger paycheck, that influencer couple lifestyle. But a little voice in my head replied, he was happy with a normal life, and you shattered it. I pushed that voice away. In the months that followed, I tried to distract myself. I went on a couple of dates. They were nice enough guys, but it all felt hollow. They couldn't fill the void Reed had left. I was so used to how he made me feel safe, even when he bored me. I had blocked him on social media out of pure pettiness, but I found myself unblocking him, just to see if he'd reached out. He never did. I'm sitting here now in this borrowed room, and I realize I was the main problem all along. My pride still won't let me say I was completely wrong, but I can't deny it anymore. I see how I destroyed something stable and real for the illusion of something better. I threw it all away, starting with that one cruel joke that exposed just how little I respected him. Part of me still thinks he could have tried harder to keep me. That's the messed up logic I still live with. I wanted him to be more ambitious, to accomplish things, but maybe I should have realized that our definitions of success were just different. He found happiness in the everyday, while I wanted fireworks and applause. I never stopped to consider that we could meet in the middle. I let my ego and my social media fantasies dictate our marriage, and when he didn't measure up to my impossible standards, I basically told him, and the world, that he was a loser. Looking back, the worst part is that he really did love me. He loved the real me, the one underneath all the filters and captions, and I took that love and used it against him. I acted like I was the prize in our relationship, the reason his life had any value. And now I'm alone, halfway wanting him to call and say, "Come back," just so I can keep ignoring my part in this mess. But maybe he's finally learned that he deserves to be with someone who respects who he is, not someone who only sees him as an accessory to a dream life. That thought scares me more than anything because I realize I might have lost a good man for no good reason. And I'm still not ready to tell him I'm sorry. I might say I regret how things turned out, but if I'm being totally honest, I regret more that I didn't get the outcome I wanted. A shinier life, with a version of Reed that I invented in my head. So, here I am, telling this story to the void, because I can't say it to anyone else without them judging me. But that's the truth. I joked that my husband's only accomplishment was marrying me, and now I'm the one who walked away with nothing. People probably hate me for it, and maybe that's fair. I keep wondering if I should reach out, but then my pride stops me, cold and hard. And that's where I am. Stuck in this weird limbo of knowing I messed up, wishing things had gone differently, but still not fully owning what I did. I don't know how this story ends, but I know it's not the fairy tale I thought I deserved. I guess that's all there is to say.